half of that would be at home, and then the other half would be at meetings and well as on site. Thank you very much.
So Samkela, I'm really interested, before we get into the communicators' content perspective, you know, there's a saying that goes that the outcome of any intervention is dependent on the internal state of the intervener. And I'm particularly interested because I know that many of the people that I've been on calls with, I have grown young adult kids in my home. And so I normally work from home, and for me to work from home is relatively easy. But I know that many people are juggling their children's education, homeschooling them, trying to keep track of their work situation, and then being called upon as communicators to be actively present. So just give us a little bit of an insight. You know, you're saying that today, for example, for this call, you've left home and you've gone to the office, but just give us an insight into kind of what would be happening if you were having this call from home, because I think understanding the human aspects of what's happening for practitioners at this point is quite important.
Yes, I think really it depends on a number of issues. Firstly, for me to be able to be here, be part of this call, I had to do a lot of organizing. That will firstly start with deploying people in various other meetings or places so that I can free myself. But still, obviously, like you said earlier on, I'm still on the phone. I'm still trying to check what's going on. But if I was at home, which is what I was kind of trying to avoid, I would have to juggle this meeting, firstly. Secondly, juggle the workload that's on the phone and that's oncoming. And then thirdly, juggle the wife and the kids. So it adds, being at home adds an added burden, because at some point, children are unable to understand. And even if you can lock yourself away in some other back room or wherever, study room, ultimately you will be disturbed. So at least the disturbances have been minimized by being outside home. But obviously our situations are not the same. Not all of us have big houses. So environments, you know, when you start using the word home, stay at home. So automatically that word doesn't necessarily mean a 6-bedroom house type of thing. It could be, you know, it could be a small room. So it depends really. Hence, you might find some people would rather go work in the car. And also the other part about being at home in COVID is that all of us had to then set ourselves up, because our municipalities don't give us home internet. You can have a 3G, you can have access to some airtime, but to be on Wi-Fi, it's something you would have had to set up for yourself a long time ago. So what I did in this case with my staff was to engage with the IT and have some routers for those workers that are accessible.
I'm gonna ask you just to hold on, because we're gonna come to some of those logistical challenges that communicators are facing. Thank you so much for sharing with us and being so willing to be open with us about your challenges. Colleagues, can I just check if any of the other people who have been allocated a sticky note on the mural board are there? If you want to just give us an indication. If not, we're happy to hear from, we've got almost 26 participants on the call right now. So from a few other people on this notion of working from your home during a crisis. Can I just check whether any of our city communicators who have a sticky allocated to them are on the call? Okay, in that case, can I invite anyone who is in the communications fraternity, who's joined the call and interested in this conversation, please check in, tell us who you are, where you're working from at the moment, and this issue of working during a crisis, as is indicated on the board, working from home during a crisis. So is there anyone else that would like to to check in on this call, please feel welcome. We'd love to hear your voice on this call. Lungedo, maybe would it be possible to hear from you as kind of a governance and comms person at South African Cities Network, just on what this has been like for you?
Rihanna, can we ask either Simpiwe from eThekwini or Tobeka from Sunduzi to just check in as well and just give us a sense of what's happening in their own spaces? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lungedo. Can we then, Simpiwe, I take it you are with us there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome. Sorry. So I was just hoping you would just jump on when I indicated. So Simpiwe, please introduce yourself. And you're answering the question. You are not working from home. You are either at your home or your office during a crisis trying to work. Please tell us who you are and what that feels like.
Well, good morning, colleagues. My name is Simpiwe Dlamini. I'm the communications officer at the eThekwini municipality. It's going to be very difficult for me to speak because my HOD is also here. But yeah, nonetheless, I'll just have to say something. I think for me, it's been very interesting. You know, I was just speaking with my colleagues a few weeks ago, just before this whole lockdown thing, that we really need to get used to Teams and Zoom in terms of having meetings, because I'm one person who really hates unnecessary physical meetings. You know, I think that has really taught us that we don't really have to meet physically in order for us to make decisions. So I think we really to really take advantage of this technology, and it will save us a whole lot of time as well, traveling to and fro meetings. It will save us really a lot of time. But adjusting from working from home vis-a-vis working in the office, I mean, I've always believed that as communicators, we don't need really to work from the office. You know, this other day I just tweeted and I also posted on Facebook that I think they can just dismantle my working station because I don't really need it anymore. So I can just work from anywhere in the world. So I mean, from anywhere. I can have meetings from anywhere due to this latest technology. But for yeah, basically for me, that's that for now. And then when we get into the details of our campaign and then I'll come back to that later as well. What is that we've been doing as the city? And I'm hoping that my HOD will also jump in that as well, because I've been leading the campaign. I was tasked to lead the campaign. So personally, I'll lead, and then maybe my HOD can also add on that one. I don't know, maybe he also wants to say something as well, Mandla.
Okay, so Simpiwe, thank you very much for that. Lungedo, I just want to check. I think we will allow one more check-in, and then we're going to move to actual content. So I'm going to leave it to you to suggest to me who else we invite in to check in at this stage.
I'm not sure if Mandla is on the call. If he is, then I'll nominate him to speak. Alternatively, Tobeka is also on the call from Sunduzi. She can also give us a sense of where she is at this point. Thanks, Rihanna.
Okay, Mandla, are you with us? Okay, in which case, Tobeka, can we invite you just to give us a sense, Sunduzi, and what it's like for Tobeka in terms of working from home during a crisis. Welcome to the call.
Hi, colleagues. How is everyone doing during this crisis of COVID-19? I think the experience for me, it has been a bit challenging because I am in Eastern Cape during this lockdown. and my other colleagues, they are in KZN. So we've been using a lot of group chats, your WhatsApp, making phone calls. There is a lot of information that is needed at this time in terms of campaigns, in terms of district. There's just a number of information that is needed at the tip of the finger. So I don't think we were necessarily ready for this, especially in terms of technology. So there has been a bit of challenges. Sometimes you find out that the network is not good in terms of downloading the pictures, the number of queries that people are having, especially the media as well as the communities on Facebook. So you find out that people are expecting the information at the tip of the finger, and you are expected to be in so many groups at the same time. So that has been a bit of a challenge, but I think as communicators, we really need to be improving in terms of using facilities like this moving forward. But most importantly, I don't know how we can ensure that we have probably a lot of big group chats for our communities as well, where we can be able to reach each and every person, because some people are not on Facebook, some people are not on Twitter, especially rural communities. So I think for them, it becomes a bit difficult to get information at the tip of the finger, because even if we are issuing statements and on Facebook, even if we are issuing statements on the media, but some people don't have that luxury of such technology. So I think we need to look at things such as how do we reach our rural communities. But yeah, we are trying to manage. I've got my foot soldiers on the ground, especially our photographer and our media liaison person is on the ground moving around with the media just to ensure that the information is being kept updated, especially on our social media, as well as the information that we are sending to the media and the public at large. Thank you, Rihanna.
Thanks, Tobeka. And really just to salute all of the communicators who are on this call this morning. The fact that you could even make time to still be in learning mode in the middle of a crisis, I think is testimony to just the extent to which COVID is challenging and stretching all of us. We're gonna move now into a fuller discussion on what is happening in your cities in relation to crisis communication, COVID-19, and also what you as city practitioners, so obviously understanding that you are communicators, not necessarily health experts, that in many ways the National Department of Health has been leading the communication effort on this crisis. But I think, Tobeka, you've raised some interesting issues around kind of access, messaging, target audiences, rural versus urban. So really this is just a guideline. You don't have to stick by these categories, but I think specifically we're interested in kind of what are you doing from a comms perspective and what are you learning as you're doing. So maybe if we can just have people, Simpiwe, Tobeka, and then if there are other people who are still with us, Samkelo, are you? I think you're still here. Let's just indicate from you, and then if there are others who would like to contribute to the discussion, please feel free to use the chat box or raise your hand. So Simpiwe, do you want to kick off any kind of early thoughts on giving us a sense of how your communication machinery is working in eThekwini and what you're learning from that?
Thank you so much. I think for us, we kicked off the campaign. I think it was a week before the president announced the lockdown. I don't know if colleagues can hear me. Okay,
yes, we're hearing you loud and clear, Simpiwe. You've indicated that a week before the lockdown, eThekwini had already kicked off the campaign. Yeah, we hear you loud and clear. Great.
Okay. Thank you so much. So we started with our radio campaign, which was then followed by our print campaign, and then subsequently our outdoor campaign. But what we really find in terms of difficult in terms of rolling out the campaign to the fullest was the issue of the budget. As we all know, the Treasury has put in place austerity measures in terms of ad spending, you know. So for me, I found that very, very difficult in terms of rolling out the campaign, you know. Yes, we are expected to communicate, but at the same time, we cannot spend, you know, according to Treasury. So that really limits us in terms of.
So Simpiwe, I'm interested in how you're actually dealing with that. So there isn't really a budget. We're under austerity measures, but we have to continue to communicate. What are you doing to overcome that difficulty?
Yeah, then we then resorted to being on the ground instead of spending more in terms of our outdoor campaign. So we started a campaign of taking the mayor to the people. So what we've done is we've converted our Operation Masake to COVID awareness campaigns. I think our mayor was the first mayor in the country to be going out to people, teaching them and creating campaign about the COVID-19. I think that really has worked wonders for us, because then you're interacting with people on the ground, you know, which is, I mean, the media were asking us that, do we really have to do that? But we really felt that it was important, because it's better to engage with people, because you get.
So Simpiwe, I'm gonna keep cutting in, right? So sorry for that. I know it's not great. Solly, I see you're on the call. You please feel free to hop into the discussion, Solly Moeng, if you'd like to. But Simpiwe, I mean, communication, of course, is not a one-way thing, right? Partially, it's about getting the messaging out, but it's also about listening. And I'm really interested in this process of your mayor going to speak to communities, what it is that you're hearing people say as you're going into communities. Yeah,
then at first people were very reluctant in terms of engaging with us when we're on the ground, you know, for a number of reasons. I mean, people didn't really believe that this was happening. They didn't believe that this was affecting them. They really thought that it was just affecting the rich and the white people. So those were the reactions that we were getting from the ground.
I'm gonna ask you to hold that thought. And Tobeka, tell us a little bit about kind of Msunduzi. You've indicated that you, in fact, are sitting in the Eastern Cape, trying to move along the communications in Msunduzi. So maybe tell us how that experience might be similar or different to what's happening in eThekwini. But Solly is also asking us that he wants to know how, as city community, so maybe let's compare the Msunduzi response to the eThekwini one, and then we'll come back to answer Solly's question. I also just want to invite in other city communicators who are there. Please just raise your hand so that this doesn't just become a KZN discussion here with Msunduzi and eThekwini. We really are keen to hear from other cities who are on the call as well. Tobeka, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think before I left, because I actually left on Thursday when the lockdown was going to be starting midnight, but immediately when the president announced the state of disaster, we developed a communication plan on how we were going to be creating awarenesses. And the first place where we started creating awareness was internally with our staff working with occupational health in terms of sensitizing them on what is expected with that social distancing, sanitizing, and what so forth. And then we issued a public notice, which we took to the media, and we took it to all our communities at large. Our APM came on board to start doing loud hailing to the communities, just informing them of what is happening and explaining what is this COVID-19 that is taking over the world and what was the expectations from the communities. And then from there, we sat with the Office of the Speaker, with all the councillors, just informing them that they will need to go to communities, because as part of our public notice, we're going to be closing a number of facilities. For example, pools, the limitation on the people that were going to be coming in on the libraries. And obviously, we needed to ensure that that information is cascaded on the ground. And then from there, the mayor then started, after the lockdown, the mayor started a campaign of actually going to the communities. And we had to, organize the homeless shelter for the homeless. And obviously MECs, they were starting to coming in,
so
in terms of ensuring that food parcels being sent to communities.
Tobeka, Solly Moeng has a specific question, and I wonder if you can kind of indicate to us, how are city communicators aligning with national messages on COVID-19? So you've indicated just now that in your internal comms plan as Umsunduzi, you had to look at facilities that you're closing, the mayor going on the ground. But I think there's really an interest to understand for those of us who are watching this thing play out predominantly on mainstream and social media and not necessarily having the benefit of the interactions that both Simpiwe and you have talked about. How are you guys aligning messages from national while looking at your local realities and challenges? So maybe if we can move, Fahima, that discussion into the learning section, and we're quite keen to understand what it is that you're learning about this dance between the national messages. And Solly, I'm told by Sean that you're also just been invited in to bring your voice into the conversation. Please feel welcome. So Tobeka, let's hear from you. And can I just check, is Samkelo still with us? Okay, it doesn't appear. So Tobeka, Simpiwe, can you give us a sense then?
Rihanna, sorry, Samkelo is still with us, and it will be interesting to get a sense of what they are doing in Buffalo City. Just before you move over to the next question, I think he's back with us. So maybe let's pose the question to him in terms of what are the communication initiatives that the city has been engaged in during this time. Samkelo.
Sorry, I keep going in and out. It's crazy down here. Basically, we developed a communications plan as soon as the president made the announcement. Standard communications plan, because remember, none of us know what we're actually supposed to do. So there's your generic communications plan that talks to every platform that you will use in terms of a crisis communication. We couldn't cost it because we also, again, didn't know what type of measures we're going to come across. But what we then did was to quickly advise the city manager's office, because most of the first communique was revolving around circulars, internal communication, as well as essential services. There was a lot of internal confusions around that. So we were part of the internal communications rollout. So we did that a lot initially. So our first base was to communicate internally and solve. There was a lot of confusion around that, who must go where, how, and so forth. Once we were done with that, we then also during that time we were simply, the Department of Health has been amazing. They created a WhatsApp line, so that sorted a few things. They created the website, and the president, together with the minister, kept on briefing the nation daily. So we then had not to concern ourselves about what's going on around the country, but the issue was mainly becoming what's going on around Buffalo City. So our communications plan then has been centered around 4 things. Firstly, it's been the stakeholders' engagements, primarily based on the relationships we have with other stakeholders, GCIS, as well as the province. And then the second pillar of our communications plan has been around platforms, which is your social media. We specifically said social media because we did pick up that whatever we do really goes viral. And also in the absence of us speaking, that vacuum was getting filled. And then the third one was around campaigns, which is basically campaigns with all the stakeholders that are working within the city, from anyone who's doing anything, be it your social development. So all of that, though, has been anchored around the fact that we are sitting at the technical level of the command center. So we have since been evolving. We started with 4 staff members. Now we are on 7, which is the staff members that are allowed to be out there. Unfortunately, we can't sit because if you're talking any project that is taking place out there, we've realized that people are starting not to believe what we're telling them. If we're telling people that we are doing something, they actually want to see us, because people are unable to get out of their homes. So at this stage of the communications, I think people, the public, the media, everyone is getting used to us as being the source of information, which at first we were really responsive. Now we are actually the ones that are breaking the news. Sorry, I need to take this call.
Thank you, Samkelo, and absolutely we understand your need to take the call. Maybe just listening to Samkelo and listening to all of you as well, Tobeka, talking about kind of just getting internal communication in your organization sorted out, intergovernmental communication sorted out, and then the need to speak to communities and build trust. I mean, I'm hearing a lot about people not necessarily trusting the messaging that's coming through, the sense that this is affecting someone else, not us. So would be really keen to hear more about how it is that you actually balancing and navigating some of this. Tiro, I understand Tiro from the city of Ekurhuleni has just joined us. So welcome, and in a minute we'll get a view from city of Ekurhuleni, but maybe let's have Itakweni and Msunduzi give us some sense of balancing these various aspects of communication that you are managing at the moment. Tobeka, you ready to go?
Hi, Rihanna. I think for us, even before, and Simpio will agree to this, even before this crisis, we do have a group which is called Local Government Communicators Forum, where you have your GCIS COGTA as well as all the head of communications in KZN. So basically, and we also have another group which is called DCF, which is your District Communicators Forum, just involving our district at Umgungundlovu. So basically, in terms of communication, but what we did for the Local Government Communicators Forum, we had to include our colleague from Department of Health as well, because we needed some sort of update. So all the campaigns that we have been doing locally, we are updating each other on that provincial local government communicators forum, just to ensure that everyone is kept abreast. And GCIS has been feeding us with information, the templates, the messagings that need to be going out there. So I believe that's how we have been balancing our communication, as well as we have been giving updates on the activities that are being done by our principals in our respective municipalities. So it has been assisting us because we are able to benchmark on, and if Durban is already ahead on a particular campaign, because we are getting the statements, we are getting the plans, we are able to piggyback on that. If the city of Mkhathuze is doing something differently, we are able to see how can we take and incorporate that on our plans as well. Also the statements, we are sharing them both from nationally, also we are being alerted in terms of when the minister is going to be doing a media briefing and all sorts. So basically, I think that is why we have been balancing our communication. The information has been forthcoming. There's been really a flow. I think for me, Rihanna, in terms of communications, even though we do have challenges here and there, especially with us being under administration and the financial constraints that we are having, but this really has been a very exciting time for communications, because I believe that even our principal, they are finally realizing the importance of our role in government communication, which is not necessarily always the case. Thanks, Rihanna.
So Tobeka, that
Rihanna, your microphone is muted.
can you not hear me, Lungelo? Tiro, can you hear me? Tiro, can you hear me? Tiro, are you able to hear me? Tiro, can you hear me? Okay, so apparently, so I think Tiro's gone off the call. Simpiwe, are you still with us?
I'm still here. I'm still here.
Yeah.
I think,
So Simpiwe, I mean, I'm hearing Tobeka almost create a picture of an element of that what crisis communication is doing is firstly intensifying existing relationships in city communicator forums, but also bringing front and center the importance of communication, I guess not just in a crisis period, but overall. So can we, I mean, just get a sense from your perspective in eThekwini, how it is that you're experiencing both the intergovernmental coordination around comms and, you know, whether you're feeling that we're learning things about communication now that post COVID-19, what should we keep doing? What should we stop doing?
yeah, I think this has really provided us with an opportunity to as communicators to stop this thing of working in silos. I think Utsobeka has really summed it up very well that we are working together as comms in the province. And I must say that GCIS has been playing a very crucial role in terms of supporting us at municipal and district level in terms of aligning our comm strategy and then aligning our messaging. And I think that's really something that we really need to take out from this experience, that constant benchmarking is very important, constant interacting is very important amongst comms officers. I think that is going to be our strength going forward.
So, I mean, I'm seeing a number of things and discussions in the chat, which I think go back to our check-in question. Just on the level of overwhelms, I think we've had Ayanda from City Parks on the chat. People just talking about the level of overwhelm that they're feeling from being on many calls, many different virtual forums simultaneously, just tons of webinars. And I want to slow it down a little bit right now and just check in and invite people to tell us about what, if anything, are you doing for self-care as a communicator in this period. Tobeka, I'm not sure. Is there anything that you're doing for your own self-care, given that, I mean, we've just seen with Samkelo, he's on this call, he's then been called in to take another call or interview, and that I have no doubt that people have almost back-to-back virtual meetings, which can be quite exhausting in themselves, because there's something different about kind of meeting people from a screen and meeting people face-to-face. So just interested to hear what it is that communicators are doing for self-care during this time. Anyone who wants to go, you can either chip in into the conversation or contribute in the chat box. Tobeka?
Hi, Rihanna. For me, you know, I think it has really been a difficult time. I do have one of our, we already short stuff, and unfortunately, because I've already left, we did not expect this overwhelming in terms of information that it was going to occur. So the lady that is left back, unfortunately, she's out there on the ground, and you can imagine the exposure, because wherever Mayor is going, she has to be there. I'm constantly on the phone. I am on my computer. I am releasing statements. I'm interacting with the media. I have literally been losing my mind. And sometimes you get this information and you are told that, no, it's the wrong information. You have to go on Facebook. You have to go on Twitter. Make sure that you're editing. Literally, I'm going back. In fact, I'm going back to KZN after this. I'm driving back because this thing of me thinking that I can do this mobily, it's just not working. I'm literally losing my mind. So in terms of self-care, we were not prepared for this. And unfortunately, as communicators, I don't know about Durban, but for us at Msunduzi, we are short-staffed. We don't have resources. Except our phones, you know what I mean? So we were not necessarily prepared for such a huge crisis, which literally makes it impossible for me to think that I can work mobily. Some of the things I need to be there physically because there are just so many things and we are expected to be everywhere and everybody's expecting information from us, whereas some of the information you don't even have it. You know, even the lady that is there, she's working even at the like when they are going to sanitize the ranks in the night, she has to be there. And I feel now that she's burnt out, so which is why I need to go back and go and release some of the stress. But even though whilst I'm at home, there hasn't been time to be sitting, to be honest. Literally, I'm on the phone.
Rebecca, I'm gonna just slow it down for a minute and ask everyone on this call. So I'm just gonna want to introduce a tool, which is a simple tool in the midst of what really sounds like craziness that any one of you can use. So I'm gonna ask us collectively to just spend 30 seconds very consciously breathing in. So breathe in and then drop it. So let's all do this on the call together. Just breathe in. One last one. Breathe in. Okay, Simpiwe, let's hear from you. Is there anything in the midst of clearly what is a very intense period that you're able to do for your own self-care as a communicator and the care for your team of communicators?
Well, for me, I think the guys from the office have been very supportive. We started the campaign, and then a few days after we kicked off the campaign, then I was admitted in hospital. So I've been home since then, and the support that I've been getting from the office and everyone has been really amazing, and people were able to just take over from where I had left off with the advice and support from our HOD woman Lancel, who's been really been on the ground as well, together with Mswake Maisel and the rest of the team in the office. And we're lucky that I feel open so because you guys are short staff, but like I'm saying, we're lucky that we do have quite a number of people in the office who are able to take over as and when someone is really maybe getting ill or something happens to that person. Like in my case, I had to leave the campaign because I was not well. But I think it is becoming too much. It is becoming too much, especially for our video team and our social media team and our media liaison team is really becoming too much because they are expected to work around the clock, and they cannot really plan their lives really because assignments comes in anytime and you're expected to act immediately. There's no time to say, hey, let me take a breather, let me do this and this, you know. So yeah, I really think that maybe after this lockdown thing, they really need to take a break and spend some time at home so that they can really recover from the burnout. Yeah.
So of course, I mean, none of us, thanks Simpiwe for that, none of us have any idea of how long, how much more pain it's not just a South African issue, it's a global issue. I think we're all keeping an eye both on what's happening in our own country, what's happening on the continent, what's happening globally. And I think there's no planning for, when does crisis communication end? But at this point, I'd love to invite Solly Moeng. Solly, if I can ask you to check in first with the same question that other people checked in with around where are you working from home, and just introduce yourself to our viewers. And then we'd like to get a little bit of your perspective on what is from a recipient perspective and on the other side of the communication spectrum, your sense of what's going on. So please be welcome and tell us about where you're working from and what this is feeling like for you, Solly, at this time.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear. Thanks, Solly. Solly, we can hear you. That's fine.
Great.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hi, my name is Solly Muweng. Yes, I am working from home. I'm in Cape Town. But fortunately, I can do this because a lot of the work I do is of consultancy. I'm a consultant in what you call reputation management. That we develop strategies and around communication crisis. And I'm also on the global executive committee of the Davos, Switzerland-based World Communication Forum. I invited Lucero. Tomorrow we have a global discussion on how this COVID-19 is being communicated by countries around the world, where things are lacking, what could be done better, to the extent to which there's alignment, global alignment. Because as we see now, it seems like everybody's running in their own direction. The president of the USA is constantly sending out confusing messages. I think there's a lot to be learned from how the alignment around communication has been done in South Africa. So if you look around the world, different people seem to be doing it differently. Some leaders are doing it quite well, others are doing it less well. The cities, I think in terms of cities, my interest is to see to what extent, look, business has been hit very badly by this thing. And different cities will have either tourism as the mainstay of the economy, or agriculture, or retailing, or different. So I'm interested to know, I'm looking at the extent to which different communicators at city level do not just rely on one message fit all. In other words, if you have a very important business sector that is hurting now because of this, and to what extent are you also going out of the broader message to assure them, to say, look, we are aware that you guys are hurting. These are the things that we're doing. Oh, that's where stakeholder engagement comes in. You don't just, the era of blasting one message to fit everybody is gone. And you can see with the lockdown, there's no lockdown that fits all communities, all human settlement types in South Africa. You almost have to go to the suburbs and say one message, go to informal settlements and say a different message, so that you are aware of your stakeholders are and the issues that really worry them around this topic, and that you customize certain messages to them. And customizing messages to them doesn't mean that you're moving away from the broader national message. I don't see a lot of cities doing that. Everybody seems to be concerned with just blasting out one message to fit all. That's why we have the number of frustrations that we have seen around the country, especially coming from poorer communities where there is not abundance of space, where people cannot just move from one bedroom to another, to a lounge, to another room, or into the yard. So I think it's important that cities take into account that they're also managing their image. At the end of it all, we're going to look back at this and say, well, who was the best communicator in this? Who was the most effective in assuring the key stakeholders and their residents, their business communities, and other sectors, that they understand their issues, they're with them, and they can always be reached within a press of a button, a call, if there are issues that need to be specifically addressed in that area. I don't know if I'm making sense.
So Solly, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's echoed by a question in the chat box from Ntabiseng Letoko, who is saying, who is responsible for reinterpreting or customizing the communication strategies for informal and rural settlements? For example, we know that social distancing rules don't necessarily work in many of these communities, but there are still measures that can be taken in this regard. Is there a task team in government responsible for this? So, I mean, Solly, I think we also want to possibly, just benefit from the fact that you are looking at comms at a global level, and I think you've already given some guidance, but the intention of this call is really for it to be a learning call. Right. So maybe let's get into a conversation about because we've been kind of as people have described, on the fly, many things happening at the same time, trying to get our political principles out on the ground. But it does appear that there's a very strong call for segmentation of messaging and this idea of understanding COVID-19's impact beyond health on economy, on vulnerable communities who can't exactly work with some of the messaging that's coming through. And let's maybe get into a conversation then, and I'm going to invite anyone who wants to contribute just to raise your hand at this point on what it is that we're learning and what can we do better. So I want to say that I think people are doing really well under very difficult circumstances, but if we had to take a step back and reflect on our own practice and hearing some of what Solly is saying, what's emerging for you that maybe makes you rethink a little bit some of what has been happening, or maybe you haven't yet covered some of what's happening in your city?
Can I just do a little follow-up? Okay.
Yeah, please do, Solly.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that a lot of people are doing awesome work under really trying, unprecedented circumstances. I think it's important to acknowledge that. But we also need to acknowledge that, the guys sitting at national level don't have the view that people sitting at local level have of who these key stakeholders are, what the issues are locally that need to be specifically zoomed into, as it were. So in some way, the local communicators at local level need to be the eyes of the guys at national level. They need to be able to say, guys, we hear what you're saying over there, but here where we sit, these are the issues that we think need to be addressed, and this is how we're addressing them. Maybe there's going to be a way to feed back into people like Popo Maja, the national guys at national level. This is what we're doing at local. This is what you guys are saying over there. But if that message were to filter directly like that into our communities, people are going to be happy or unhappy, confused, and all that. And this is how we locally are going to have to speak to. So each city communicator must know the key stakeholders. That's where stakeholder engagement comes in.
So I'm keen to hear from our city communicators on the call. I mean, I think Solly is proposing, and earlier we talked about communication being a two-way process, the extent to which you've been able to feed in the local conditions into the national conversation. Is that happening? I mean, I think it's more than just having the communicators forum, but the extent to which you're able to influence how communications is unfolding based on local experience. Can I just check, besides Simpiwe and Tobeka, are there any other city communicators who might want to come into this discussion? Okay, then you've got airtime, Simpiwe and Tobeka. Please feel free to share with us based on what Solly is saying as well.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Solly, for that eye-opening info. I think we really did not take into consideration that we really need to deal with important stakeholders like our business people. I think, as we all know, that in Durban, tourism is one of our major contributors in terms of the economy of our city. I think our campaign has been lacking in that regard. Looking at what Brand SA is doing together with Tourism SA, I think they really saw a space, and then they're really doing very well in that. I think I also saw Toyota as well as Toyota or Dunlop as well. They really getting that space as well to say, really, as business people, they are doing something as well to try and communicate the message, and also to complement what government is really doing. I think ours was really absorbed in terms of saving the lives, and then we sort of neglected that there are other stakeholders that are also being hit hard by COVID-19. I think we really need to start now, including that in our comm stories. That should be our second phase now. Depending on how long this lockdown is going to last. I think that what Solly just said now will really assist us in terms of shaping the messaging now, to accommodate everyone and not have a message that is a one blanket approach, sort of a message. Yeah.
So I'm told that Ntobeko, your colleague Ntobeko from Umsunduzi is also on the call. Ntobeko, I'm assuming that you are the person that Ntobeko has been referring to that's been doing a lot of the running around. So I'm still interested in the extent to which local government practitioners and communicators are able to influence and, shape the narrative that's unfolding at a national level based on your local experience. Ntobeko, can we invite you in at this point? I mean, is the way in which the GCIS forum that you talked about, is it creating the space for that to happen? So Ntobeko, can we just ask you to unmute?
Hi, Rihanna.
Yeah, sure. Ntobeko, do you want to go? I'm not sure if Ntobeko is still with us.
I'm not sure what's going on as well, but I think I will concur with what Simpiwe is saying. I think in the nutshell, we should all appreciate the fact that this was not expected. This is beyond a crisis. In fact, I think when we call it a crisis, maybe there should be another big name. You're talking about a global pandemic, which has been a huge threat in people's lives. And as much as business is affected, and I think we've heard a lot of opinions coming from different groupings to say that we understand the economic effects that are going to happen after the COVID-19. But at this point, nobody could really be focusing so much on that rather than saving lives, because if lives are not there anyway, there will be no business to go around. So I believe that what the government has been doing nationally, provincially, as well as locally, which has been our space as well as cities, the focus right now is on saving lives. The focus right now is providing that awareness and education. And we must be mindful of the fact that our people, when on the onset, when this message came, especially our rural people, they don't necessarily have the privilege of understanding the impact, let alone if you are referring to social distancing, given the conditions that they are staying in. If you're referring to people that are staying in the shacks, that are staying in hostels, they don't even have the luxury of those sanitizers. So I think the message, especially for local government, it has been on focusing on curbing the widespread and flattening the curve of this COVID-19. So basically, at this
so
point,
Ntobeko, I'm gonna push back a little bit on this issue, right, and just ask, to what extent, for example, if you're in a government communicators forum with people from the National Department of Health, from national departments who are communicating, for example, social distancing and so forth, to what extent are local government communicators able to say, well, actually, this is not the reality of the communities we're working with, and are you guys modifying your messages at national level to actually respond to some of our local realities? I'm going to supplement that with a thing that has just come in on the chat from Totlelo Mogere, who says we need to continuously respond, reassure, conscientize around COVID-19 means for communicating other news. For example, what about crime, gender-based violence, inaccurate water, environmental sustainability? And I hear our city communicators saying that we've been very focused right now on saving lives. And I'm hearing others saying, well, there's other parts of the system that also want to be communicated to. So maybe two issues very quickly. To what extent are city communicators able to shape the narrative of how national communication is unfolding? And then to what extent can we begin to widen out our communication lens? And I mean, I think there are also kind of departmental initiatives within municipalities, and many of those, as you've indicated, have been sanitizing and so forth. But on the economy and economic responses, to what extent are those conversations between departments responsible for that and communicators actually happening? Let's take Simpiwe and then Ntobeko.
Sorry, Rihanna, just before Simpiwe comes in, we have a Princess Tobin Diouf on the line. She's from Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. So perhaps after Simpiwe has responded, we can ask Princess to just give us the lay of the land in Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. Thank you.
So why don't we, Lungedo, maybe let's allow Princess to introduce what's happening in Nelson Mandela Bay first, and then we'll come back to those questions that we raised. So Princess, welcome. Yeah, please give us a sense. We've had Buffalo City from the Eastern Cape. It would be great to hear from Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. Just give us a little bit of a sense of what's happening from a comms perspective in your city at the moment, and as Tobeka has indicated, amidst a global pandemic. Welcome, Princess.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear, Princess, and we see you too. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Princess, and I'm doing public relations and events in Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality Communications Office. So we've been chasing a moving target, but we've really tried our best with this campaign or with this disaster. We've been working with role players from South African Police regionally. GCIS has been a very good role player in helping us to formulate messaging. Department of Health Promotions, in terms of ensuring and helping us with the correct content regarding the disease itself, the safety measures, how people should practice good hygiene. And we've used like social media a lot. We've used radio slots. We've done a lot of video recordings, which we've posted on our Facebook and our Twitter. And we've basically made sure that we are on the pulse in terms of what is happening and communicating viciously. And it's like, every day has been hard and fast. Things change. So we've had to keep up to date and know exactly what's happening so that we can empower our community about the do's and the don'ts.
So Princess, earlier before you joined the call and even through the chat box, we've just been kind of unpacking, firstly, that we want to salute our city communicators who often with very limited resources are really trying very hard to get the messaging out. But one of the questions that has come up from Solly Mueng, and as there's also in the chat box now another question, just around the extent to which city communicators are able to influence the national communication narrative based on the reality of what's happening in your spaces. From your perspective, and Simpiwe and Tobeka, please feel free to step in. Is that happening at all, where you can actually use the local experience and influence the national communication messages that are coming through?
I think what has helped us a lot is working closely with government communication and information system. We regularly have teleconferences with them, and whatever information or whatever challenges we go through, whatever experiences that we go through, we make sure that those issues are heard on that platform so that they can be escalated.
Are they modifying, Princess, can I ask, are they modifying, would GCIS communicators be modifying the communication approaches based on the feedback cities are giving them?
Can you repeat that? I lost the connection.
So I'm asking, in this GCIS forum where you raise issues, based on experiences of city communicators, are the overall messages being modified when you feed back to the communicators forum? So is the city experience actually influencing the communication space nationally?
I think to a certain degree, yes, but our focus has been largely in our region, because I think each region has got their own challenges. And then we just leave it up to GCIS to escalate whatever issues. And then, but I do notice that with the talking points that we get from GCIS, it does reflect what's happening on the ground. They do give us talking points, and then I do notice that it does talk to some of the issues that we've shared with them. Like, for example, the big problem that we had in the Black communities is the not really taking the matter seriously, still going out in large numbers, and also the social distancing whilst waiting in queues. So how we've handled it and how we've portrayed ourselves is being very interactive with the community on the ground and taking stock of that. For example, like some of our environmental health educators would physically go to the queues at shopping centers where there was a trend of large numbers, and they would actually inform and educate and show and do demonstrations, live demonstrations of how the hands should be washed, what you should be doing when you're out, and not what you should be doing when you are at home. And we've made sure that we kept
Okay, I'm not sure, Princess, we caught most of what you said, and then it feels like we might be having a bit of a tech challenge. Lungedo, you wanted to come in at this. Sorry, Princess, we caught most of what you said, and I think the indication was that your environmental health officers are actually going out on the ground and demonstrating to people what social distancing looks like and what washing of hands. Lungedo, I think you wanted to come in at this point.
Thank you, Rihanna. I think listening to colleagues from the various cities, I mean, one understands that there is the COVID-19 related communication. The sense I'm trying to get from colleagues is what has been happening with regards to municipal related communication, insofar as how people in this lockdown period are accessing services. What has been the posture of the different communications practitioners in various cities to make sure that parallel to the communications around COVID-19, the city residents are still serviced, and that the city still reaches out to them in relation to municipal related services. Has that kind of communication taken a backseat? Has it been happening parallel to the COVID-19 communication? What has been the experience of colleagues in that regard? I'm very interested to learn that. Thanks, Rana.
Thanks. Simply, where do you want to go for that one?
Yeah, I think just to respond to Olunqedi, I think we've been doing that parallel to the communications with regards to COVID-19. We've been assuring citizens that services will not be interrupted. We've been giving them an assurance that we will be doing our best during this lockdown to make sure that the services are not interrupted. So we've been communicating to them that our DSW team, in terms of refuse collection, they're on the ground. If there are interruptions, we do communicate with them as well immediately to say that there are interruptions in terms of interruptions in terms of power supply as well. We've been very aggressive on our social media platform just to communicate if there are interruptions, so as water as well. So we've been communicating that as well, because we did not want to neglect that part, because at the end of the day we are a service delivery institute, so we need to be seen as really giving service to our customers per se, our community. So that part, I can assure you, that has not been neglected.
Thanks, Simpiwe. So clearly people are juggling many things simultaneously. Princess and Tobeka, maybe just give us a sense on kind of your normal communications roles and responsibilities and the standard functions that a municipality is responsible for over and above COVID-19, and to what extent is that kind of communication continuing in this period? Princess, are you able to give us an indication for Nelson Mandela Bay?
If I could come in, this is Samkelo.
Yeah, please do, Samkelo. Buffalo City.
Yes, I think basically, and it's a very interesting point in the sense that as cities we are revenue based in terms of our funding. So after COVID-19, we will be left with a bank balance that we should justify as to why would there be a revenue decline. So one of the first things we did, parallel to COVID-19 communications, as well as anything else, was to actually identify our revenue base, which will be your business people, which will be your residents, who still we want them to pay accounts. But now it's been said that most of them cannot walk in to pay accounts. So we then developed a communication tailor-made for them, so that that would be then a communication that is linked with ICT, which would enable people to be encouraged to pay sitting at home. Most of our people obviously haven't been doing that. So we had to develop a number of platforms firstly, as well as a number of communication posters and all sorts of things and messaging on radio to tell people, firstly, how can they access the free electricity thingy? Secondly, how can they purchase electricity? And then thirdly, how can they pay their accounts? And then over and above that, we have to send each and every customer, consumer, SMS, to say, this is who we are, this is the account number, this is your statement. So that on its own, we had to really make sure, because we are afraid, people might take this as to say, it then means that I don't really have to pay because nothing is happening in the country. So that's the first thing that we did. And so far, we are able to measure it. So far, our revenue team has been quite happy. We're still not sure in as far as, remember, we are in a drought. And over and above that, we had introduced a punitive tariff over and above the water usage. But now the messaging from everywhere has been said people must use water more. So a decision then has to be taken as to say, we want to lift up the punitive tariff so that we don't charge people, but at the same time, we say they must wash their hands. So that's been what they're debating. And I've been pestering them because people want to know, the municipality, you are saying this, but you want to charge us at the same time. And then to answer your last part on the services, we've had to actually turn ordinary technicians, ordinary engineers into communicators, because people are sitting at home and they want to see and they want to understand if we are still functioning. So we've basically asked everyone to, if you're going out and you're logging and you're sorting a fault, whether it's a water, whether it's electricity, take a picture for us, take a video. Let's try and show people that we are still servicing you. Guys who are doing the normal scheduling of picking up litter, let's take photos of that, because ultimately people, we cannot help it. People have got this thinking that everything has come to a standstill, and it would be unfair if a municipality in this situation takes advantages of them. So we basically have to prove that we are actually working service, delivering services, so that we can justify why we're charging them. So that's quite key for us to actually balance that COVID-19 as well as the services we are rendering. Thank you.
Thanks, Samkelo. I mean, I think you raise a really interesting additional dimension around messages around, wash hands more, and yet we're in a drought-stricken area, and almost all of the messaging that you've been doing around saving water historically, now trying to marry those two. So there's a question from Ntabiseng Letoko, and I'm going to put it to all of our city communicators. And the question is there an openness to collaborating with external communication consultants? And are you open to assistance from these individuals at this point in time? And I've heard you all cite budgetary constraints, but maybe let's just use the last while on this call to talk about, there are many people on this call who actually want to get involved in helping around the communications effort, and what is the view of city communicators in relation to that. So we'll allow all of our city communicators. So Princess, maybe let's start with you, then Samkelo, then Simpiwe, and then Tobeka. And I think that's pretty much going to take us close to the end time for this call. Princess? Princess, just unmute yourself. Okay, that's great.
Okay. When you say consultants, are you referring to private companies or government entities or other government partners, or?
So I think the question was really around, there might be people on this call who are communications experts, but obviously running that as a business, and they might want to be sharing insights and so forth. And would city communicators be open to working with people who have expertise, who want to guide? And I understand that you can't commit on this call, but I think it's just a kind of offering that's being made. So let's just hear.
I think it's something we should look into to improve on things. It's something that we could look into. I can't say yes or no, but I think I think it would be a good idea. I think so.
Thanks, Princess. Simpiwe?
To be honest, really, I think there was no space to involve consultants in this regard, because no one was expecting this. The planning on its own, there was never enough time to plan. But one will really welcome any sort of intervention from consultants or any form of advice from consultants. But really, in terms of us engaging them in this regard, no, we did not. We are running our campaign in-house, and yes, there are challenges, but I think we've been doing very well.
Tobeka, you've already indicated that Msunduzi is under administration, but would you be open to advice and guidance from communicators who are not necessarily in the government system? Okay, I'm not sure if Tobeka is still there. Samkelo, can you come on?
It's a very difficult one, in a sense that you know, the national government has issued a circular that says what type of services must be procured at this time. We are redirecting our budgets to sanitizers, to, you know, so there's from a procurement point of view, there's serious limitations on spending, specifically even on communication platforms, and you have to try and justify it. We're also very wary because we know of scandals of this nature. We don't want to come out of this and be asked the question is, how did we blow so much money on COVID-19? So we also wary of that. If you know Buffalo City, you will understand why. And then thirdly, what we've been using, because my assumption is that there are consultants who are sitting at home with all this knowledge, and they actually would want to actually add value, but they are unable to access anyone. My take would be, for instance, we would take any form of research and advice. It might enrich you, not perhaps financially, but if you can actually add value in any of our cities. I'll make an example of Afis's Copland, who are doing research to say what type of sanitation services are we rendering and how are we communicating. That's scientific knowledge. You can share that knowledge at no cost and build a relationship. Remember, most communicators are out there and they will take any form of assistance. So for a consultant, I would say if you have the people that are really on a drive to work with such people would be your GCIS and the people that are centralized. But for municipalities, it would be to try and use this opportunity to establish relationships and hopefully unlock those after COVID.
Thanks, Samkelo. Princess, I've noted your hand, but we have 5 minutes left on the call, and I'd like to hand over to Lungedo at this point, just to perhaps begin to talk a little bit about what kind of way forward based on what we've heard, and just to thank you all for, amidst your real busyness, taking the time out to share some of what it is that is happening in your cities. Lungedo, I'm going to hand over to you to take the call then to closure.
Thank you very much, Rihanna. And again, thank you very much to my colleagues from the various cities. I've received a few messages from other colleagues in other cities saying that they would have loved to join in, but they've been called into to other more pressing duties. Some are having interviews arranged for the mayors and 2 of the cities. So it's quite a hectic time. But I would like to thank the colleagues that have made the time to come in and share their experiences and some learnings with us, and also just thank the rest of the colleagues who are not necessarily from cities, but who have taken the time to join us and in trying to deal with some of these vexing questions around communication during this crisis time. Also, a special thank you to my good friend Soli Moeng for gracing us with his presence and wisdom. Just to say, Rihanna, that the feedback from this webinar will be shared with all the city communicators. The idea is that we continue to hold a series of webinars around communication and what is happening in the various cities. We are planning another webinar on communication post the COVID-19 lockdown, because as you can imagine, colleagues, there are certain messages that you will have to develop and begin to propagate to your various stakeholders around what happens after the lockdown, assuming that the lockdown comes to an end next week. In fact, even if it were to be extended, there's post-COVID communication that colleagues need to think about. And I think it would be important for us to start to share and compare notes around what would that mean for example, the metropolitan municipalities who are urban spaces, who are the spaces where COVID-19 is most prevalent. Just a little to share something, we were discussing something yesterday, another input we were making to some submission. And one of the issues that we realized is that the urban spaces, if you look at the health and financial data that's beginning to emerge, are the most impacted spaces in relation to the scourge of COVID-19. And therefore they, more than any other spaces, have to develop cogent responses to the pandemic, whether these are just communication related, whether they are about making sure that we secure urban health security, or just making sure that we reignite urban communities post this environment. So what we can promise you, colleagues, is that there'll be a series of these webinars, and the next one, which we plan for later in the month, will be to deal with the post-COVID-19 lockdown period, and what are some of the messagings that we should be propagating to our stakeholders, our various stakeholders, as we begin to open up our cities to what might resemble normal activity. With that, thank you very much, Rihanna. I think that we've come close to the end of our scheduled webinar. I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Lungedo. And just to once again thank our city colleagues and all of our guests who've registered. You would have seen that throughout the call, we've been using an application called Mural to really whiteboard, create some of the discussion. We're going to send all participants on this call a link to the mural board. It will be available till end of business today, so you can play with it. We'll lock down what is there, but you can add, there are sticky notes, there are symbols, you can go onto the board, you can add your ideas, your voice, and then we will PDF it and send a PDF summary of this first webinar for city communicators. And just thank you to everyone who's been able to join, to those who've been listening, to those who've commented, to those who've participated actively. We look forward to hearing your ideas on the mural board. And thanks to SACN for putting this session together, and strength to all of our city communicators. Trust it's been worth your while to spend this time with us this morning. Thank you very much to Sean and the technical team who've worked behind the scenes to keep everything moving for this call. It's 11:30. Thank you very much. Bye.